So I am Matthew Gundy, and this is my year reflection. The biggest change to my reading this year was not actually my reading, but my writing. After reading Reading of the Unliterate, it completely changed how I viewed writing. I've realized that I'm a very unliterary reader, and I will just basically read through stuff without understanding it, without connecting it. And after that, I started taking my time and enjoying and both improving my writing and enjoying it, reading more outside of class. So that's the biggest change. But the other large change is I cared a lot more about essays this year. I viewed them more as just something to turn in, which greatly improved the final product. As an example of this, we have my essay reflecting my educational experiences. So one of the specific things I did was I included a lot more anecdotes and stories. You can see here I'm using a story to make a point, and I'm a lot better at a narrative writing than informative writing. And just using anecdotes and stories breaks up the flow of paragraphs and makes it flow a lot more naturally. On the topic of flow, that's also something I did a lot better at. I had some awful transitions before, and these ones are a lot better. They make the entire experience feel more like a series of points, and just overall improve the structure of the paragraph. But for all of that, you need to generate ideas. And the one I do the most is brainstorming. So the way I do brainstorming is I will first go over just outlines don't work for me. It's not something I work, it just makes things a lot harder in practice. So what I normally do is I will just brainstorm a bunch of possibilities, and then I will quickly eliminate them, like understanding constraints and major negatives, and then I will then go over the positives. For an example of this, we have the way I chose to do this format of narrating a PowerPoint. So we had the benefit of doing it in class as a huge group, so we got a ton of ideas, from podcasts to videos to PowerPoints to brochures to pamphlets, and some ideas that were meant to generate ideas like puppet shows and games. The reason I chose this one was, first of all, understanding constraints. The major constraint here was presenting evidence. I felt that anything like a podcast or essay would be really awkward to present evidence in. For an example, for the essay, you can see here, putting evidence in an essay just doesn't work, because you have to physically talk about where it is on the page. That's very awkward, and being able to just physically point is so much more natural. And the reason I didn't choose podcasts is because it would have definitely dragged down the experience if I talked about every single point. It would have made it greatly longer, and it would have meandered from the actual point. And if I don't have an idea, I will continue to brainstorm until I'm satisfied. I'm a very creative person, and I'm thinking all the time. And this example of a narrated PowerPoint, I got the idea of a video, but it took me until I was riding home on the bus until I figured I wanted a PowerPoint, just because it's the format I'm most comfortable with. But this is not the only way. I also do a lot of free writing, which is just writing ideas down. You just do it, and then you go over it later. It doesn't interrupt the creative flow, and it's very helpful. And sometimes you just need to get things done. I made a lot of choices this year, and things that worked well, I've already talked about, including more narrative elements and the other things, and I will talk about this later. But file organization. I used to put everything into a single file. It was a massive mess, and I lost many assignments. Having a having a massive just ranked thing is so helpful, and it makes things a lot easier. The second thing is I went off ADHD medication. This made things harder. On the other hand, my life was much better because I was not constantly starving all the time, and I actually talked to people. So that made my life a lot better, and that made the final product of everything better. And doing homework at school, I worked really productively at school and not that well at home. So I worked a lot more on stuff in other classes. Things that did not go well. Meeting requirements, that was an issue. because I'm a very creative person, I don't like looking at rubrics because I feel like it hampers the creative process and has other consequences. A second thing is note taking. In my other classes, such as math and history, I'm very good at remembering things because I just have a notepad where I write down everything. And if I write down something, I'm much more likely to remember it. And I should have done that more in this class. And then there's the doing the homework at home. And speaking of reviewers, now's the time to talk about it. Halfway through the year, I switched periods to 3B. And during that, I pointed to the two closest next to people, and we were in a group the entire year. That this works super well. I'm going to do that in the future. Having a set group of reviewers really helps. You can understand their strengths and weaknesses, and it makes everything a lot better. Some things I did not do as well with was I really like speaking in discussions for revisions. Just like I've said before, being able to physically point to things instead of like highlighting it just feels a lot more natural. But a lot of my points were made purely verbally, and something like this where I went over counterclaims and how it would sort of felt like something was being set up to fail. There were similar things that I'm sure were never edited because they just forgot about them as soon as they went out of the room. So that's definitely something I can improve in. So as for what worked well in the class, I loved the group's discussions. I've talked about it a bunch. I just like talking to people in discussions. And the overall topics were way better. What was not helpful was there was a lot of testing this year. I know you've complained about it a lot in class, but there's a lot of it, and it's not good, but unfortunately we have to do it. But something that is not as controllable is it felt like the schedule was not built around testing, that we couldn't do things because, oh, you had a test. So that was definitely something that could be done better. Community. I'm a very friendly person. I got along with everyone in all of my group projects, and even the ones I didn't like get it off on, it never impacted the final product, and we just did the assignment and nothing more. I respected others. Yeah, but did a very good job at respecting others, and I felt like I was safe to and free to do all my ideas, and I would not be judged for them. And goals and expectations. My goals for this year were about organization and grammar. I was expecting a much different class than what I expected, and I felt like not getting that was great. Rather than just having another class where I go over like minor grammatical issues, I did more about structuring essays and getting evidence. That helps a lot more than random grammar. So most of my goals are actually irrelevant because they were mostly about grammar. But ones that definitely succeeded with was file organization. I talked about this before, but it worked super well, and I will definitely do it in the future. And that is everything.